you have any questions at all, feel free to put it into the chat box. There's a little chat box. You can, if you don't know how to use it, there is a button on the bottom somewhere on the screen that says chat, and all you have to do is just type in a question, and if time permitting, uh, Dory will do his best to answer it. So with that, thank you for joining, everybody. We're having yet another update call. Tonight, we're joined by Dory Roberts. He may look familiar to those of you who have not been on other calls. Dory was actually on our first call. Dory and his wife, Katie, and their two daughters, Naya and Bay, used to live out here. They now live in Austin, Texas. They were members of Kol Tikva. They're still part of our family. And Dory was kind enough to join us this evening. He's traveling. He's in Phoenix, Arizona. And what we're here to talk about is really to get an update from someone who was a part of our community that has been directly affected by what occurred on October 7th. Um, Dory had two family members that were killed, a cousin, Ravid, 51 years old, and he can talk about, how he learned that very recently, and his aunt Afrad, who was 67 years old. He still has a an uncle, a family member that's missing, Gadi, who's 80 years old. Have not heard from him. Have not, haven't seen anything. But he is still listed as kidnapped, as missing. And the amazing news is, several days ago, during the first release of 13 hostages, um, his cousin Doron and her two daughters, Aviv and Raz. And by the way, Aviv is 2.5 years old. Raz is 4 years old. Were part of the first 13 that were released. So there's been some very, very difficult news, but there's also been obviously some amazing news. You may have seen Dory on probably every major news network around the world. Um, he has not been quiet about this. He has been using his voice to tell his story, his family story, and others. And of course, with everything going on, there have been 110 that have been released, at least as of this hour, and there's still 140 that are being held captive. The ceasefire is still ongoing, although there are issues going on within Israel. There was a shooting today at a bus stop that Hamas has claimed responsibility for, and people were killed and injured. So it's still a very challenging situation. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dory, and maybe if you can talk about, because some people weren't on the last call, just kind of what happened, how did you become, a global voice, and most importantly, talk to us about your family, especially Daron, Aviv, and Raz that are now back home. Again, thank you for joining us. We appreciate you, Dory.
Thank you so much for having me, and good evening, everybody in Los Angeles and wherever you're out there. It's good to have you guys back. Kol Tikva always been really kind to my family and myself, and we have many sweet memories from the time in Los Angeles. If you were in our first call a few weeks ago, you heard the story. You might have heard it on the news. Um, my family that lives in Kibbutz Nir Oz, which is about a mile and a half away from the border. Um, so it was quite of a shocking for us to learn on October 7th that the war broke out, and about 250 militant Hamas terrorists managed to penetrate the community, the kibbutz, and start this crazy massacre. And it was just a shock, I think, for the entire country, if not the entire world. If you're Jewish or Israeli or have family, you understand what happened to that country that day. It was very shocking to all of us. And then the next 3 days were very, very shocking to all of us. But as we came out of it, we start understanding that we need to get up and do something, and everybody were pretty much feeling the same of like, you have to get up and do something. donations starts flowing around, all kind of, from clothing, from toys, from social workers, from barbers to cooks, to anything that could go out and help the refugees of those communities feel back and welcome again. They were evacuated pretty much to all over the country, not even to one place. The residents or the refugees from New Orleans were about 160 of them were evacuated to Eilat, and about 100 or so made it to the Dead Sea, and then the rest are just scattered. So it's really hard to keep the community sense in when everybody's scattered and you have nothing but a bunch of, whatever you were wearing on your body that day, everything else left behind. In the next few days after the war, I was lucky enough to be able to connect with old friends on the East Coast and the West Coast and start taking on that leadership or that lead voice of my family here in the US. And that snowball just took its own life and pretty much start rolling down the hill when I was requested to be on Fox, CNN, News Nation, um, and then recently to PBS and locally CBS, ABC, NBC. So all the major network covered the story of my family, and we felt like we had to do this, and we had to keep their face up on the media. So to apply that pressure, and really soon after that, we were in that notion of this is what we do best. We took shifts, and we the family in Israel covered um, their morning in the European section of the news, and sometimes the morning news here in the U.S. And when they went to sleep and it got really late, then I jumped in and started doing my part. It was very interesting concept of putting my face on news everywhere and trying to learn how to talk to news and how to tell the story and how to live it every time I'm on camera. It took a lot out of me, but I felt like I was doing a very important mission. And the good news is that we succeed, because the bottom line is that they were freed in the first group of that came from the Hamas. Doron, my cousin, she's 34 years old, and her two daughters, Raz and Aviva, 3.5 to 5.5 to 5 years old, were able to be released. And everybody, it seems like the entire country were holding their breath together, like to see if it's really coming, because the way that the negotiation on the ceasefire took place was that every morning there will be about 200 trucks of humanitarian aid coming into Gaza Strip from the Egyptian border, followed by the release of between 10 to 13 hostages, according to a list that was agreed upon in the government, and by the Hamas, and then move them with the Red Cross um, vehicles over to Egypt, then re-enter to Israel, where they met the officials from Israel, the army, medical team. From there, they were taken by helicopters or even just a motorcade to a nearby Air Force base, where they were again received by medical teams from the army, social workers, mental health workers. They were just like there to support in any possible way, and allowing them that landing back to reality and freedom, where from there they had to decide according to their physical conditions, if they're going to go to each hospital. um, since they were physically relatively okay, and I'm saying that and I will go deeper a little bit to details in the next few minutes, but they were sent to the Snyder Hospital in Petah Tikva alongside with their mom, and they were on the first helicopter to land there, and under very heavy security and privacy. Nobody was able to see them being transferred from the helicopter to the hospital. They met again another medical team, and from there, only after long hours, they were finally able to reunite with the dad, Yoni Asher, who's been on the media for so many days, doing so many interviews, really being like the lead and the spearhead on this entire media front. And she got reunited with her sister as well, my other cousin. Um, at this point, they were going through. They had a two big rooms that hosted them, um, and over the next couple of nights after the medical team was doing what they had to do to get them steady and safe, and all the findings are pointing that nutritions were a big issue while they were held almost for 50 days in captivity. Um, their diet was pretty much chickpeas or hummus from cans and dry pita bread, and that's about it. A little bit with water on the side, and they were able to go outside to daylight for about an hour a day if the conditions were allowing. Sometimes they couldn't go. Um, there were no beds, so they're sleeping on the floor or on a chair. They were seems like they were held together in one group, so we're never separated. And the kids were definitely showing signs of a big trauma. Um, we do not have any other medical information at its point to protect their privacy and to protect their safety. We do not want to share any other information, and though right now we don't have any other information, me and my family decided to give them the space as well to recover, and we've been reunited with them, or my family in Israel was reunited with them. Unfortunately, I think it's gonna happen today, which is Friday in Israel, when my family gonna meet them at the shiva that they're doing to her half brother, Doron's half brother, my half cousin, that was pronounced dead. His story is very tragic. That he was one of those emergency response teams that uh, jumped to do his job, his duty in the community. It's a small. The response team is very small. It's about between 10 to 15 men who's have an access to weapon and to the armory. And in cases like that, they're supposed to defend the community till the army and the police are coming to take over. And on October 7th, we heard it was about 7 or 8 hours before any soldier from Israel even stepped in the community. So it was obviously it was a long um, fight with Hamas, and knowing that fact, I knew that he doesn't have a whole lot of chance for survival. Nonetheless, we just didn't know what happened to him because we never heard any rumors. We thought he might have died that day in the kibbutz, and his body was never recovered because we heard about the horrible things that happened, even to bodies that were left behind, that were treated by the Hamas in such a unhuman and barbaric way. So we really thought that that's what happened, but it seems like we were wrong. And even after he was killed in that battle, he was taken to Gaza so the Hamas can negotiate the return of the prisoners over the Israeli civilians and soldiers' dead bodies. Um, and that's because they know that we do value life, and we do even value our our dads and our relative. Even when they're dead, we're still gonna try to negotiate um, some kind of return for to be able to do a proper funeral and burial in Israel. So that's what we found out. Um, it was earlier this week, I believe, and so it's been a very, very crazy roller coaster of emotions, from the understanding that my family is involved to then hoping and doing everything we can, then finding last Friday that um, my cousin was released and everybody was extremely happy, and we could all take a deep breath and finally um, putting a little bit of hope in our lives and really thinking that there is hope in there. There is definitely something that is looking better for the future of our loved ones and for the other families as well. We're very clear in our message in the group of the hostages families, that we want our hostages to be back home, and we don't really put a price or anything. It's not our job to name the price. We just want them back home. With that being said, it's we understand that there's a war going on, and the army generals has received the order from the government, and they're doing their job. We just had to make sure that the government know that we want the priority to be hostages first, and that's what we did. Um, we launched so many campaigns around the world. Every major city in the world kind of jumped in with the Israeli and Jewish community. We faced a huge amount of anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism activities, pro-Hamas, pro-Palestine activities around the world. So we're fighting another war that is super important, for all of it, and I will talk about it in a few minutes as well. But that roller coaster of emotions is something that just didn't stop for the last month and a half. From the day of the war, the October 7th, to finding that my aunt was murdered and her body was left by the border to then be recovered by the IDF, and then we brought her to burial at my kibbutz right next to my mom, where she passed away just 3.5 months ago, earlier in summer, from cancer. Um, that was a very sad gathering again at the same cemetery. Her burial is temporary because she is wanted to be buried in her own kibbutz, which right now it's just a war zone. There's no way you can do anything over there. Um, and then from there to the great news about my cousin and the two daughters, and then again back down to understanding of the faith of um, my cousin, my half cousin that did not survive that attack. And now we're still hopeful that my aunt partner for the past 20 years, Gadi Moses, is still out there uh, in the Gaza Strip. We saw early on in the war a picture that was published later on the New York Times, of him being in the Gaza Strip alive, carried by militants. So that's the only evidence we have that he was alive at that time. He's fluent in Arabic, so he's able to communicate. Um, he's a wonderful person who just loved the area, love Israel, love agriculture. He was a mentor and a teacher for many um, agriculture communities and farmers around the world, sharing the knowledge that he got and received from Israel about how to farm the land. Um, so we were trying to keep it together. We're trying to move forward. The media thing is something that is on and off. It spikes when there's news and it goes away when there's nothing to update. And we just have to roll with those punches. We just understand that this is the nature of a news story. And sometimes it takes a lot out of all of us, that getting ready, being prepared, getting dressed, and be put in front of a camera and then answering the questions all over again and again and again and again just to put another story. But again, we're not doing it for our own personal gains. We do it for the release of the remaining of the hostages that are still there. As you all know, we're right now, as Adam mentioned before, about 140 hostages are still um, held by the Hamas. We hope they're all alive. We hope that they're all still be able to return to their loved ones. There's rumors all the time because it's a war, so there's a lot to deal with, and they're saying one thing, and then we're trying to confirm it. You've seen it on the news with the Sweet family, the Vivas family, where the two little brothers and the mother were kidnapped, and we are hoping that they're still alive. But their rumors are flying all over the media about if they're still with us or not. We just can only hope that they're still alive and they will return back to Israel. And in the next few weeks, I guess, and months to come, we will find more and more and more stories from the people who have returned. And it seems like there's a very clear plan on the Israeli side about how to handle hostages that are coming back from such horrible and tremendous amount of trauma that there's experienced in the Hamas. So there's a lot of privacy and a lot of demands for to keep it this way, both with information and for the sake of the recovery, because it's going to be a long recovery for those families, especially the kids, to try to find a path or a way how to return to the life they had before October 7th. Um, and after there are, hopefully, after the war is done and we'll be able um, to get back to somewhat normal life, we still have to rebuild those communities. Right now, they're pretty much burned down to ashes. There's not a whole lot left in there. There's a lot of pain in there. Um, the state of the country of Israel, they're trying to focus on one thing at a time, and right now they're trying to just survive the war. I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions asked when the war is done of like what happened, how did we got here, who is to blame, will take responsibility, who will not, just as we had after the 73, the Yom Kippur War, that we had the Shamgar committee come together and finding that, you know, there was a lot of people out there that didn't do their job, and that's why we got into a war situation. Um, I think this is even more because the the times that we are today, with the technology, with everything that we have, all the news cycles way shorter. Back in 1973, I was not around, but I've heard some rumors there was a little bit less news happening around because it was either on the main news at 8 o'clock at night or on the newspaper, and that's all you got to hear and learn about what's going on in the front lines. When today you have live updates minute by minute on every possible news outlet, and that is a big player in this in the days to come after the war of like what happened and how do we got to a war with the Hamas. Um, at this time, we're just trying to do our jobs and try to keep the mission forward. Really trying to understand like how to keep all the families engaged. So there's not going to be a fallout, if you would, of participants and people who are part of this journey. So yeah, that's where things are right now. Families are recovering in Israel. The other families are still hoping to see their loved ones. We understand that the last ones on the list that is still very very long are probably the men and the soldiers that are still remain behind enemy line at this point, and that's what we're looking forward to achieve is to keep the message very clear. We want everybody back before this war is over, and the time is now. While we're making great progress with the ceasefire, and hopefully the the governments are doing everything they can to get this motion forward and that momentum that was created to keep it going and keep those people coming back from the Hamas. Um, that's pretty much all the updates I have for you guys. I wish we could do this in person. I wish I was not um, in Phoenix today and I could be there with you guys and sit in my beautiful temple back home. But like, I'm very, very appreciative and very thankful that I have such a wonderful family, such beautiful faces come to listen to what I said, and it's always brings back smiles to me and to my family to know that we have so many friends back in Los Angeles.
So Dory, thank you. We appreciate you sharing your story. And actually, there are some questions coming in. And for those of you that want to ask questions, all you have to do is click on the button that says chat and feel free to enter whatever question you have, and I will get it to Dory. So the first question we have is from Wayne. And question is there any information about how they decided who to release and in what order?
Um, so the demand from the Israel government was kids and women first, elderly, kids and women first. People who have medical conditions, kids that have need to be home and reunite. We know that there were at least 3 or 4 kids that were released early on till now that spend the entire time by themselves. Um, Went through mental torture because they were presented with the horrible videos that the Hamas did uh, to our brothers and sisters on October 7th. They could barely sleep. They could not talk. They could not cry. No nutritions and no connection to the outside world or to any adults for 50 days. So that trauma for a kid is very very traumatic, and just like the thought about being alone for 12 years old is just unthinkable. So they put those people in the front. That was a demand, and then we did the same. We put the teenagers and the women prisoners at the top of the list. And I think we just finished. I believe that most of the women and the children are back home, and I think we're gonna start seeing the men are coming back slowly. I hope they're gonna be able to do it by age and release their elderly and the youngest first. I know there was a 17 and a 16 years old, and then here and there we hear some requests, personal requests from Putin that he's trying to influence as well. So he's got personal requests to who to release, and those are probably um, Russian nationalists that came to Israel and immigrate to Israel and they have dual citizenships. So I hope that answers Simona's question about the women and the children if they're back in Israel. Um, there's another question by Simona about their release conditions by the Hamas. I think I think really it's a big show that is happening there. I don't think they were held in good conditions, but it seems like everybody comes out dressed up like nicer. But I think most of them were wearing the same pair of clothes they came out with on October 7th for 50 days, and that's underground in tunnels. We are not sure of the sanitarian situation over there. Some of the hostages says it was fair. Some of the hostages says it was not good. There was no medications. There were nothing that the people can survive on, and it was really hard for everybody to. But I think they're putting a show. They're putting a show to let everybody show that they're nice and they are somewhat human in their attitude towards the hostages. We know there was a story that was published a couple of days ago about this woman that was released with her friend, and she did not want to go because they kept her husband. It was not his time to be released yet, so she asked to stay with him, and they're like, "No, you need to go. You're on the list, and you need to go." And eventually, they made her to go, and they tried to be all kind and nice to her, but um, she stood there upright and proud and kind of told them in the face like, I don't buy this show and I don't want to be here and I want to be back with my husband. And they just sent her off to the Red Cross, and she gave the same pretty much attitude to the Red Cross. So we know that like they have to follow a list that is agreed upon between the Qatar government to the Egyptian, to the Hamas, and to the Israeli government. Those are all sides are negotiating constantly. But I do believe they're trying to put a show, but everybody knows that what is behind it. Um, no, again, Karen, to your question about if my family knows anything, it's I think they were held in separate locations, and some of them are saying they're not even at the like held by the Hamas. They were held by the Islamic Jihad or by people who went and grabbed whatever they could, and that's part of um, the price they were promised. The payout is if you grab a civilian or an army IDF member or even a dead body, you will get paid for that. So at some point, we kind of know that after the militants went through and did whatever they could and start heading back, it's took them about 2 hours to do their first round, and then there was a little break, and then there was a second wave that it seems like that was more of like um, the Palestinian um, Hamas supporters, but not militants who went and just used a lot of brutality and a lot of the non-conventional means to hurting anybody they could and take everything they could. They took literally so much of the properties that was in those houses and money and jewelry and pretty much everything that is valuable. They just put it on a vehicle and then stole the vehicle and drove with that vehicle to Gaza. As we know, they're not in a very financial um, good place right now. So they were hoping they will be able to get some goods out of that that event. So there's no rumors. There's a lot of rumors about the Bibas family, but there's no confirmation. And if there are confirmation, if there are some information coming from those families, it is it's kept very tight within Israel, within the even the Shin Bet or the Mossad or the Israeli forces. It's not coming out to media. They're trying to leverage everything they can from this ceasefire. So when the time is over, they will be able to go back right into it and apply the pressure they need to take out the Hamas. Um, the economy, Neil, to your question. So there was a beautiful thing in Israel happening when everybody, the IDF recruited about 300,000 men and women to the reserves. That created a huge shortage of working hands, not even mentioning the Palestinian that coming in from the West Bank and the Gaza Strip daily to work in Israel. Um, we saw families, teenagers, and youth pretty much jumping in to help um, small businesses, mostly farmers, to do like hand labor um, jobs of farming. And but now school is back, so everybody's back to school and try to go back somewhat to normal life. So the economy is playing actually um, a big part of the decision on this war because one, nobody out there in the world will donate to keep a war going. That's the first problem. Second, no matter what the reason is, we're not the underdog there, so we have to remember that. Two, we have budget issues where it's a big government right now. Bibi Netanyahu put a big government that have many offices and a lot of ministers, so that costs money. And he's in a pickle right now to fund this war. So the outcome or when this war will be done is very much depending on budget decisions as well. Um, I hope that that answer your question, Neil. Um, Reading the next question from John. Yeah, I mean, again, each network have different sources. All the networks have sources on the ground in Israel. There's tons of reporters, there's lots of media in there right now. So everybody's trying to do their best to right now um, get their information straight and try to conversation. I've been reached out by media outlets here to reach directly to my family. And that's just to show you that even the media, the news is they're not willing to necessarily play fair and give the space. So it's really up to the network what kind of information they're putting out there. That's the bottom line here. Um, as we saw today, Stand With Us post um, a post on Twitter X that is was not correct, and and after they couldn't get it confirmed, they took it down because it was not confirmed. It was not confirmed by the proper channels. Therefore, this is fake news, or this is news is not being approved by the authorities. Um, so yeah, we have to trust the news, but we can always cross-reference. If you see something on CNN, absolutely go to Fox News, see if they're talking about the same. Fox News is covering a whole lot more than CNN on this because CNN is jumping to other topics as well. Um, so we have definitely seen both sides of the media and what they can do and the information they put in there. So it is kind of on us to be able to vet it and go out and do our fact checking, like me and Adam just did before we got here. We heard about that the chance of the Bibas family being released or being killed, and we went and did our own research to find out what do we know, and there's nothing out there stating that they're dead. There's rumors right now that are flying that they're lost or they're dead because nobody knows where are they, and while they're not on the list that according to the list they were supposed to be in the front and pretty much on the first groups, but they're nowhere to be found. So this is what one of the things, like, we're afraid that they were taken by militants that are not associated with Hamas, and somewhere along the way they were killed. So it's really a very interesting game of who says what and when, and to put a story together. They're definitely not making it easy on us to get a better picture. Um, Next question. And again, that's the next question is like, who's absorbing all the families in Gaza envelope? Um, where are they going? Uh, where are they? How are they living? Um, so the communities fled on October 7th at night, and some of them on October 8th. Um, they were scattered in on hotels, available hotels across the country, from Tiberias up north to a lot down south. They're scattered. There is no school. There is no. Nothing that they can even do together as community except going to funerals, and it is very, very hard and sad. Um, and that's a new reality right now. The government is trying to put them in cities or in buildings, apartments that are close to each other so they can be together back as community. Those three communities that hurt the most from this situation, which is Kfar Aza, Be'eri, and Nir Oz, it's going to take years. It's going to take years for them to be able to rebuild those communities and those kibbutzes so they can be safe enough and be able to go back to those places. From my conversation with the delegation that came through Los Angeles and came to Austin, we had a couple of guys from Be'eri and another guy from Nir Oz. they're all looking forward to go back home. This is their home. This is where they grew up. This is where they lived their entire life, and they want to go back there and be able um, to keep their life there. But I think it's a very personal question. I think it's very personal because if somebody have went through this tremendous amount of trauma and gonna suffer from a pretty severe PTSD, so they might not want to be able to go back to live in that place, considering all the visuals and all the experiences they experienced on October 7th. And I've heard some horrible stories, and I'm sure we all, try either to keep away from listening to those stories, or some of us are more brave, who's actually able to listen to those stories, images, and videos that are coming from those communities. But it's definitely a very tough time and tough decision from there to see if in the future they will go back and live in those communities, or they're gonna have to start a new life. And we'll see how the state of Israel will support them in their decision to start a new home, either back in their kibbutzes or anywhere else in Israel. We done that before in 2014 when we evacuated the Gaza Strip from Israeli communities, and we had to put them away. It was a very hard time in Israel, um, to see um, that civilians are forced to evacuate, so we can hopefully be able to come into a peace process. But obviously, that led us right now. Doesn't seem like we're heading towards a peace process, but yeah, it's very hard decision that each and every family that were there before October 7th will have to take as a decision in the future. Um, I do not know exactly how many people are talking. I know from Nero's before they start to return back home, they're a community of about 400 people. There's not a big community. My kibbutz is about the same. So 400 people, 100 of them were kidnapped or killed. So one of every four people was gone. So about 300 of them are um, misplaced and is considered as a refugee. About 160 went down to Eilat, and about 100 more to the Dead Sea. The rest are just scattered, and there's many other communities who did the same and just scattered around the country.
Story we hear about supporting Israel. You know, Karen had posted a list of vetted organizations through an organization she works for, that, you know, when you donate money, it goes directly to an organization. But what we're not hearing is, how do we support victims, and how do we support victims' families? How do we support your family? How do, you know, what do our community, you know, people are looking to help. How do we support you, your family, other families that have been affected by this?
It's a great question, Adam, and it's a tricky one as well because every family have different needs. Some of them are looking for love and looking for a hugging family. Some of them are looking for privacy and time to recover, and letting the medical teams and the aftercare and to the social workers and the therapists to do their jobs. Because what I've heard is that some of the families are pretty much gonna go to see therapists for every single, like every, I would say every other day or so for the next 8 months to to start to unpack what have been gone through the past 50 days in captivity, which is a lot. And like you said, like there's just different needs to each family, so it's really hard to determine if there's one thing we can do to do it. I think it requires a little bit more research to see what the organizations are saying. If it's them with us that are very focused here in the U.S. about the anti-Semitism, and if it's the other organization who is trying to rebuild those communities, or another organization who's trying to support and provide everything they can for the refugees that are now scattered over all over Israel. If it's to the farmers who left with nobody to able to help them farm the land. There's so much. It's just we're still in a war zone right now. It's still in wartime, so it's definitely there's no one good answer for these questions of what can we do. I think the best thing will be um, do the research, really do the research, and see from the from the entire a variety of options out there most resonate with you and you feel like you can do. For me, I did my part and I'm still doing it, and I'm trying to do this communities and media and speak up and keep their stories and do everything I can to support them from here. And I'm very lucky that I've been given this opportunity to do that. But I know that not everybody can jump in front of camera or a community and speak, and it's something that I did not know that I could do before I took this mission on myself. Um, so yeah, like I said, there's do the research, find out what's resonant with you, what is out there. Could be monetary help, could be sending letters to soldiers and victims. Um, and everything sounds great to me, but it's up to each one of you guys what to do. And we have to remember, we still have communities and family here around us, community leaders that are people just like me and you, like your rabbis, your cantors, the people who lead the synagogue, that are trying to take this big task of leading the community in a wartime. Um, we need to care for everybody, and that's important. So reaching out and really asking, I've been reached out to since October 7th by a beautiful group of people in their own time, in their own terms, and those small gestures of just communicating, letting me know they're here. Um, it's just a wonderful thing. Like Adam and Karen did that to me, and a number of small group from LA did that, and it feels great. It feels great, and Adam can tell that like not even every day is a day that I can um, find a room that I can sit down and talk. And sometimes we're both spending a couple hours walking dogs and talking about how was the day and how was the feeling. And that's the most beautiful thing, like to end the night with. But again, it's a day by day, it's an hour by hour. This go back to the very beginning of the conversation. It's a roller coaster. There's definitely bad days in there. There's definitely days that I got up, I got really bad news, and I had to still keep going. How I don't know. You just get up and do, and you do meal prep for the kids and send them to school with tears, and not their tears, your tears, and you go back home and you need to get ready for work, and you just do it. And those people over here reach out to you and just like, hey buddy, I'm thinking about you. You know, I thought about you and just wanted to say to let you know that I'm here. That's what I found is the most supportive thing for me, that I enjoy this.
Well, Karen wrote in the comments, "We love you, Dorian. All of us love you. We love your family. We miss seeing you, especially the girls running around the synagogue. And this has been an extraordinary mission that Dory was on. I mean, he's putting it lightly, but there are days where he has been interviewed by like 8 different news networks, and it's not just going on and telling an interview; it's having to process your own emotions and keep a level head while you're doing it, and sticking to the questions, and doing it over and over again, day after day after day. I mean, you sure most of us have seen him somewhere. And it's extraordinary what you've done for your family. Just stepping up and saying, you know what, I have a voice and I'm going to use it. And I think that's something all of us can do. All of us have voices, and we can use our voices to make a difference.
Yes.
So with that, Dory, thank you again. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us. I know you're traveling with, and sharing your story and your family's story. And let's continue to pray for good news, not only
Yeah.
for your family, but for everyone's family. And to all of you that joined, thanks again for once again, showing that Israel matters, that Jews are important, and that we need to continue to focus a light on this situation that's going on right now. It's continuing to change minute by minute, but we need to stay on top of it. We need to use our voices. We will be having another update call, and forgive me, on the 14th of December, unless that gets changed. Again, it'll be on a Thursday evening at 7 o'clock p.m. That's the 8th night of Hanukkah, unless that collides with something else. But so stay tuned for an email. And hopefully that night, being the last night of Hanukkah, we have a miracle and major things have changed for the positive. But again, to all of you, thank you. And Dory, most importantly, thank you so much for joining us. Have a good night, everyone. Sorry, Dory, you're going to say something.
Yeah, last thing before everybody goes, the one thing that I forgot that I did not mention when we're talking about the anti-Semitism and all that, and I said I'm going to say a few words. If you have a minute, it's important to keep in perspective. I know it in Los Angeles and New York and DC and in Miami, in the big cities, it looks like a really, really bad conditions right now where there's a lot of anti-Semitism, there's a lot of activity happening. From the little towns of Texas, I can tell you that we do not necessarily feel that. There's not a whole lot going on. So again, I know that you're surrounded by that, and there's a lot of news coming locally about what's going on. And please be safe out there. Please check on each other. Make sure you're safe. It's so important. But at the same time, keep in mind that the flyover states and everything, between New York and LA, there's not a whole lot happening there in those fronts. So, and we're keeping a close eye on that, and we're doing everything we can to address that in the news media. And I think that's the shift that we're gonna do from after we're done with the hostages and the war is to keep that in the front and center um, in our um, in our Jewish communities, in our Jewish lives around the U.S. because we're not saying we're saying that slogan over and over again. Never again is now. Never again is now. As my dad is a as a Holocaust survivor, he's been through that. He saw what happened to the world when the world uh, kept it quiet for in 1945. So this is what we're saying. Never again is now. So keep it in mind. Be strong. Be safe. Thank you again for having us. Thank you for having me. Thank you for coming. Hopefully the next time we'll be able to do it in person in Kol Tikva.
Thank you, Dory. And thank you, everyone, for joining. Have a great evening.